Hey everyone, welcome back. It's so great to have you here. If you enjoy our videos, do hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated. Now, let's dive into today's adventure. Welcome, friends. Thanks for joining us again. If you're loving what you see, remember to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more. Without further ado, let's get into the heart of today's story. Hi there, a warm welcome to all our viewers. If our content speaks to you, please show some love by liking and subscribing. Now, let's jump right into the main event of the day. Welcome back, lovely people. We're thrilled to have you. If our videos brighten your in the gentle embrace of a dawn that painted the sky with hues of lavender and rose, the world seemed, for a fleeting moment, untouched by the hands of time. Yet, beneath this tranquil tapestry lay the village of Ashenglen, a settlement carved by the relentless passage of industry. Here, morning mist clung to the cobblestone paths like a ghostly memory, whispering tales of toil and endurance. The air was crisp and carried with it the scent of coal dust, mingling with the earthy aroma of dew-kissed fields. Amidst this quiet tableau stirred young Thomas, a boy of scarcely 12 summers, whose life was etched into the very bones of the earth he tread. His silhouette, slight and nimble, moved with practiced familiarity through the narrow lanes that led from his family's modest dwelling. His eyes, a shade of blue reminiscent of the deepest sea, held a maturity that belied his tender years. They flickered with a mixture of determination and trepidation as he approached the yawning maw of the mine, a dark leviathan that dominated the landscape and drew countless souls into its depths. The mine was an insatiable beast, demanding the strength of men and boys alike, extracting from them hours of labor in exchange for a paltry sum. It was a world dictated by shadows, where the sun was but a distant memory, and time was measured by the rhythmic clatter of pickaxes and the echo of distant voices. Here, Thomas was but one of many, yet his spirit burned with an indomitable flame, a refusal to succumb entirely to the encroaching darkness. As he descended into the bowels of the earth, the world above seemed to fade away, replaced by the oppressive weight of the subterranean realm. The air was thick, laden with the metallic tang of coal and the acrid bite of sulfur. Lanterns flickered along the tunnels, casting a dance of shadows that seemed to mock the miners, as if the very earth conspired to remind them of their insignificance. Thomas's task was to crawl into the narrowest of seams, his small frame advantageous in navigating the constricting passageways. He moved with the instinctual grace of one who had known no other life, his hands deftly wielding the tools of his trade as he chipped away at the coalface. Each strike reverberated through his bones, a reminder of the labor that defined his existence. Yet, as he worked, his mind wandered, seeking solace in dreams spun from the threads of imagination. He envisioned vast green fields beneath a sky unblemished by smoke, where he could run with the wind in his hair and the sun warming his skin. It was a dream that flickered at the edge of his consciousness, a beacon of hope that guided him through the darkness. The hours slipped by, marked only by the steady progression of his toil. The tunnel around him seemed to close in, the walls pressing against him with a suffocating embrace. Yet, there was a rhythm to the work, a cadence that lulled him into a state of near trance, where the boundaries of time and space blurred into insignificance. But beneath this veneer of routine lay an undercurrent of danger, a whispered warning carried on the stale currents of air. The mine was a living entity, prone to whims and caprices that could turn deadly in an instant. Thomas was acutely aware of the fragility of his existence, the precarious balance that hung between survival and disaster. And it was on this day, as the lanterns cast their wan light, that the mine decided to bare its teeth. A low rumble, like the growl of a slumbering beast, echoed through the tunnels, sending a tremor through the ground beneath his feet. Instinctively, Thomas paused, his heart hammering in his chest as he strained to decipher the warning signs. The rumble grew, a crescendo of sound that reverberated through the earth, shaking loose clouds of dust that danced in the flickering light. Panic surged through the veins of the miners, a collective gasp that resonated through the confined space. Thomas's heart raced as he scrambled to retreat, his movements fueled by an urgent need to escape the impending collapse. The walls seemed to close in, the ceiling groaning under the strain of the shifting earth. In that moment, time stretched into an eternity, each heartbeat a thunderclap in the silence. Thomas's mind raced, searching for a way out, a path to safety amidst the chaos. But the mine was unyielding, its corridors labyrinthine and treacherous. The air grew thick with dust, burning his lungs and blurring his vision as he stumbled forward, driven by sheer will. Around him, the cries of his fellow miners mingled with the cacophony of falling rock, a symphony of despair that threatened to drown out all hope. Yet, within the maelstrom, a spark of defiance flared in Thomas's heart. He would not be claimed by the darkness, not here, not now. With a surge of adrenaline, he pushed onward, his feet finding purchase amidst the shifting debris. The path was uncertain, the way forward obscured by the swirling dust, but he clung to the flicker of hope that burned within him. As the tunnel threatened to collapse around him, as the world seemed poised on the brink of oblivion, Thomas reached deep within himself, drawing upon reserves of strength he had not known he possessed. He would find a way. He had to. And in that moment, amidst the chaos and uncertainty, a path began to unfold before him, a route to salvation illuminated by the indomitable light of his spirit. The tunnel groaned and shuddered, as if the very earth was lamenting the plight of those it had swallowed. Thomas's hands, roughened and calloused by years of toil, grasped for stability, finding purchase on the cold, clammy rock. The air was thick with dust, a suffocating blanket that clung to his skin and filled his lungs with every ragged breath. His fellow miners, mere shadows in the dim light, moved with desperate urgency. They stumbled and clawed their way through the chaos, driven by the primal instinct to survive. Their faces were masks of fear and determination, the only visible part of their beings not obscured by the swirling dust. Thomas's heart ached for them, for the shared burden of their existence, for the lives intertwined with his own beneath the oppressive weight of the earth. The cacophony of despair was punctuated by the distant sound of a whistle, a mournful wail that cut through the din like a beacon. It was the signal, a call to safety, to sanctuary beyond the crumbling walls of their subterranean world. But the path was treacherous, fraught with unseen perils that lurked in the shadows. Thomas felt the ground shift beneath him, a sudden, jarring tremor that sent him sprawling to his knees. Pain flared through his body, a sharp reminder of his vulnerability, of the fragility of flesh and bone. But he could not afford to succumb to it. Not now, not when so much depended on his resolve. He forced himself to stand, to rise from the dust and the debris, to reclaim his place among the living. The air was a swirling tempest, a maelstrom of grit and shadows that threatened to engulf him, but he pressed on, driven by the flicker of hope that refused to be extinguished. His mind reached back to the stories his father had told him, tales of courage and endurance, of men who had faced the darkness and emerged unbroken. Those stories, woven into the fabric of his childhood, now served as a guiding light, a reminder that even in the deepest abyss, the human spirit could shine fiercely, defiantly. As Thomas moved forward, the path seemed to open up before him, a narrow corridor of possibility amidst the chaos. He knew not where it led, only that it was away from the encroaching darkness, away from the threat of oblivion that loomed ever closer. He could hear the cries of his companions, their voices mingling with his own in a chorus of fear and determination. "Keep moving," someone shouted, their voice cutting through the noise like a lifeline. "We're almost there." The promise of escape, of deliverance from the suffocating grip of the mine, spurred Thomas onward. His muscles screamed in protest, every step a battle against exhaustion and despair. But he clung to the hope that had carried him this far, the belief that beyond the shadows lay a world of light and air, a world where he could breathe freely once more. The tunnel twisted and turned, a labyrinthine maze that seemed designed to confound and bewilder. But Thomas was not deterred. He followed the sound of the whistle, that distant, plaintive call that beckoned him forward, urging him to press on, to endure. And then, As if by some miracle, the darkness began to recede, the oppressive weight of the mine giving way to the faintest glimmer of light. It was a pale, ghostly glow, filtering through the dust and the shadows, but it was enough to rekindle the fire within him, to renew his strength and resolve. With renewed vigor, Thomas pushed onward, his heart pounding in his chest, each beat a testament to his will to survive. The cries of his fellow miners grew louder, more urgent, as they, too, sensed the nearness of salvation. Together, they forged ahead, a ragged band of survivors united by their shared struggle and determination. At last, the tunnel opened up into a larger chamber, a cavernous space where the air was clearer, the light brighter. It was not the full freedom of the surface, but it was a respite, a haven from the encroaching darkness. Here, they could pause, could catch their breath, could regroup and plan their next move. Thomas stumbled into the chamber, his legs trembling with fatigue, his lungs burning with the effort of drawing breath. But he was alive, and that was all that mattered. Around him, his fellow miners emerged from the shadows, their faces etched with relief and exhaustion. They huddled together, a ragtag group of survivors, each bearing the marks of their ordeal. Some were injured, their bodies battered and bruised, but their spirits remained unbroken. They clung to one another, drawing strength from the collective hope that had carried them through the darkness. For a moment, they stood in silence, their hearts beating as one, their breaths mingling in the cool, still air. And then, as if by some unspoken agreement, they began to move once more, to push onward toward the promise of daylight and freedom. The path ahead was uncertain, the way fraught with danger, but they were undeterred. Together, they would find a way. Together, they would emerge from the shadows and reclaim their place in the world above. Thomas felt the weight of their shared determination, the strength of their collective spirit. It was a force that could not be quelled, a light that would not be extinguished. And with that light to guide them, they moved forward, step by step, toward the promise of a new dawn. The weight of the earth above felt less oppressive now, its grip loosening as they neared the surface. The air grew fresher with each breath, the light brighter with each step. And then, at last, they emerged from the shadows, stepping into the world above with a sense of triumph and relief. The sun shone down upon them, warm and welcoming, a balm to their weary souls. It was a world transformed, a place of light and life, a stark contrast to the darkness they had left behind. Thomas stood for a moment, basking in the sunlight, feeling its warmth on his skin. He closed his eyes, letting the light wash over him, banishing the shadows that had clung to him for so long. Around him, the other miners did the same, their faces lifted to the sky, their hearts full of gratitude and hope. They had survived, had endured the darkness and emerged into the light. And though the road ahead was uncertain, they knew they would face it together, their spirits unbroken, their hearts full of hope. In that moment, as they stood beneath the open sky, Thomas felt a sense of peace, a quiet certainty that they would find their way. The darkness had not claimed them, could not claim them, for the light within them burned too brightly, a testament to their strength and resilience. And so, with the sun shining down upon them, they turned their faces to the future, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Together, they would forge a new path, a path led by the indomitable light of their spirit. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the rugged landscape. Thomas and his fellow miners began their trek back to the village, their spirits buoyed by the promise of a new day. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of pine and earth, a fragrant reminder of the life that thrived above the ground. As they walked, the rhythmic crunch of gravel underfoot was punctuated by the soft murmur of their voices, weaving stories of their struggles and dreams, hopes and fears. The camaraderie was palpable, a bond forged in the shared hardship of their subterranean toil. For Thomas, this walk was more than a journey back home. It was a pilgrimage toward a future he could almost touch, a future he longed to claim as his own. Yet even as the path unfolded before them, a whisper of unease lingered at the edges of his mind. The mine, with its dark secrets and unyielding stone, was never far from his thoughts. Its grip was insidious, a shadow that clung to his heels, threatening to pull him back into its depths. But Thomas was determined to resist its call, to carve out a life beyond its grasp. As the village came into view, nestled in a valley surrounded by rolling hills, a sense of anticipation quickened his steps. The chimneys puffed gentle wisps of smoke into the evening air, a sign of warmth and life within. The sight filled him with a longing for the simple comforts of home: the crackling fire, the aroma of stew simmering on the hearth, and the soft murmur of his mother's voice as she sang him to sleep. He paused for a moment at the edge of the village, taking in the scene. The cottages, with their thatched roofs and weathered stone walls, stood like sentinels against the encroaching night. Their windows glowed with the amber light of oil lamps, casting a welcoming glow onto the cobblestone streets. Thomas felt a tug at his heart, a pull toward the familiarity of his own door, where his mother's silhouette would soon appear, framed by the golden light within. He could almost hear her voice, calling him home, promising solace and safety in her embrace. Yet, as he stood there, a strange sensation prickled at the back of his neck, a whisper of something amiss. The village, though outwardly unchanged, seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for something unseen. The usual bustle of evening activity was muted, the laughter and chatter that typically filled the air conspicuously absent. Thomas's gaze swept the street, searching for a clue, a sign of what lay beneath the surface. His eyes fell upon a group of villagers gathered near the well, their faces etched with concern, their voices low and urgent. He hesitated, caught between the pull of home and the mystery that beckoned him to investigate. Curiosity won out, and he approached the group, his footsteps silent on the cobblestones. As he drew near, their words became clearer, snippets of conversation reaching his ears. Gone missing. No trace. Not since yesterday. The words sent a chill racing down his spine, a jolt of fear mingled with urgency. He stepped closer, his presence unnoticed by the others until he cleared his throat, drawing their attention. "What's happened?" he asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. The villagers turned to him, their expressions a mix of relief and apprehension. It was Old Man Carter who spoke first, his voice roughened by years of labor and life. "It's the children," he said, his gaze meeting Thomas's with a weight of shared understanding. "3 of them vanished, without a trace. No one knows where they've gone." Thomas's heart clenched at the news, his mind racing with possibilities. The village was small, a close-knit community where everyone knew everyone else. The disappearance of the children struck at the heart of their world, a disruption that sent ripples of fear through the fabric of their lives. "Have you searched the woods?" Thomas asked, his thoughts turning to the dense forest that bordered the village, a place of mystery and danger. "Aye," Carter replied, his brow furrowed with worry. "We've searched every inch, called their names till our voices gave out. But there's no sign of them, no trail to follow." Thomas nodded, his mind working quickly, piecing together the fragments of information. The mine, with its hidden passages and forgotten corners, loomed large in his thoughts. It was a place he knew well, a labyrinth that could easily swallow those unfamiliar with its twists and turns. "I'll go back to the mine," he said, the decision made. "If they're there, I'll find them." The villagers exchanged glances, uncertainty mingling with hope. Thomas's familiarity with the mine was both an advantage and a peril, a double-edged sword that could lead to salvation or disaster. "Be careful, lad," Carter said, his voice heavy with the weight of unspoken fears. "The mine's no place for the unwary." Thomas nodded, understanding the risk, yet resolute in his determination. He turned away from the group, his steps purposeful as he retraced his path, the familiar route now tinged with a sense of urgency. The sun had dipped below the horizon, the sky deepening to indigo as he made his way toward the mine. The air grew cooler, the shadows lengthening as night claimed the land. The forest loomed dark and silent around him, a whispering presence that seemed to regard him with watchful eyes. As he reached the entrance to the mine, he paused, allowing his eyes to adjust to the dim light. The mouth of the tunnel gaped before him, a yawning chasm that seemed to breathe with a life of its own. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the descent into darkness. With each step, the light faded, swallowed by the depths of the earth. The air grew heavy, the scent of damp stone and ancient earth enveloping him like a shroud. He moved with caution, his senses alert, his mind focused on the task at hand. The mine was a world unto itself, a place of shadows and echoes, where the past lingered in the air like a forgotten song. Thomas knew its secrets, its hidden paths and treacherous passages, yet even he could not shake the feeling of unease that clung to him like a second skin. As he ventured deeper, the silence pressed in, broken only by the soft drip of water from the ceiling, a rhythmic reminder of the world above. He called the children's names, his voice a beacon in the darkness, but the only answer was the echo of his own words, reverberating through the tunnels. Time seemed to stretch and warp, the minutes slipping by unnoticed as he searched, his heart a steady drumbeat in his chest. The mine yielded no clues, its secrets jealously guarded, but Thomas was undeterred, driven by the need to find the missing children, to bring them back to the light. And then, just as hope began to wane, a sound reached his ears, faint but unmistakable. A whisper of movement, a soft rustle that spoke of life amidst the lifeless stone. He froze, listening intently, his heart leaping with renewed vigor. The sound came again, closer this time, a murmur of voices, high and childlike, threading through the darkness. Thomas's pulse quickened, a surge of relief mingled with urgency as he followed the sound, his steps quickening as he navigated the twisting passageways. At last, he rounded a corner, his lantern casting a warm glow that revealed the huddled forms of the missing children, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. They looked up at him, hope mingling with disbelief as they recognized him, their savior in the depths. Thomas knelt beside them, his voice gentle, reassuring. "It's all right," he said, his heart swelling with relief. "You're safe now. Let's get you home." The children, 4 in total, were gathered together like fragile fledglings, their small bodies shivering from the cold that seeped through the stone and into their very bones. Their clothes were dirt-streaked and torn, and their cheeks were smudged with soot and tears. Yet, in their eyes, Thomas saw a flicker of resilience, a spark that had refused to be extinguished by the relentless darkness. The oldest among them, a boy no older than 10, spoke first, his voice a brittle thread of sound. We heard the water," he explained, gesturing feebly with a dirt-encrusted hand. "We thought it would lead us out, but it just kept getting louder." Thomas nodded, understanding the folly of their hope. In the labyrinthine depths of the mine, sound could be a deceiver, leading the unwary further into its maw. He glanced at the other children, their faces pinched with hunger and exhaustion. "We must move quickly," Thomas urged, offering his hand to the closest child, a girl with a tangled mass of brown curls. "Stay close to me. The way is tricky, but I know it well." The children scrambled to their feet, their limbs stiff and reluctant. Thomas led them back through the twisting tunnels, the path marked by his careful memory of the mine's treacherous intricacies. Each step was a testament to his determination, the flickering lantern painting their way with a fragile light. As they walked, Thomas felt the weight of responsibility settle upon his shoulders, a burden he bore gladly for the sake of these small souls. The mine seemed to close in around them, the walls leaning in as if to listen to their progress. Yet, his resolve was steadfast, a silent promise to himself and the children that he would not fail them. The air grew warmer as they neared the exit, the scent of earth giving way to a fresher breeze that whispered of the world above. Thomas could feel the children's spirits lifting, their steps growing lighter as hope kindled anew within them. And then, as they turned the final bend, the tunnel widened, opening into the mouth of the mine. The light of day spilled in, golden and glorious, a benediction that bathed them in warmth and promise. The children gasped, their eyes wide with wonder as they beheld the sky, a vast expanse that stretched endlessly above them. Thomas paused, his heart swelling with triumph and relief. He watched as the children blinked in the sunlight, their faces transforming from masks of fear to expressions of unguarded joy. In that moment, he knew that their struggles had not been in vain, that the darkness had not claimed them. Yet, even as relief washed over him, a shadow of unease lingered. The mine was a hungry beast, its thirst for life insatiable. It had released its captives this time, but Thomas knew that it would not relent. There would always be another day, another danger lurking in the depths. The children, now emboldened by the sunlight, began to chatter among themselves, their voices rising in a chorus of relief and gratitude. Thomas smiled, his heart lightened by their resilience. He shepherded them towards the village, their small hands clutching his, a tangible reminder of the bond forged in the darkness. As they approached the village, a cry went up, a sound of disbelief and joy that rippled through the air. Parents rushed forward, their faces alight with a mixture of relief and disbelief. They gathered the children into their arms, murmuring words of comfort and thanks, their tears mingling with laughter. Thomas stood back, his heart full as he watched the reunion unfold. He felt a tap on his shoulder and turned to see Old Man Hargrove, his eyes twinkling with gratitude. "You did it, lad," Hargrove said, his voice thick with emotion. "You brought them back." Thomas nodded, his voice catching in his throat. "They were brave," he replied, glancing at the children who, despite their ordeal, were already beginning to smile and play, their spirits unbroken. "Bravery brings us home." The village gathered around, their voices rising in a chorus of thanks, a sound that echoed through the valley and into the hills beyond. It was a moment of triumph, a victory snatched from the jaws of despair. Yet, amidst the celebration, Thomas's mind drifted back to the mine, its shadow lingering in his thoughts. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of gold and violet, Thomas turned his gaze towards the distant hills. He knew that the mine would not rest, its depths a constant reminder of the perils that lay beneath the earth. But for now, the village was safe. The children returned to their families, their laughter ringing through the evening air. And Thomas, though weary, felt a deep sense of peace settle over him, a knowledge that he had done what he could to shield the innocent from harm. He lingered on the edge of the crowd, listening to the sounds of celebration that filled the night, a tapestry of joy and relief that wove through the cool air. It was a moment to be savored, a balm for the soul that soothed the edges of fear and uncertainty. Yet, even in the midst of this respite, Thomas's thoughts returned to the mine, its darkness a constant presence in his mind. He knew that the struggle was not over, that the work of safeguarding the village would continue. But for now, he allowed himself to bask in the warmth of the moment, the knowledge that, for today at least, they had prevailed. As the stars began to prick the sky, Thomas turned his steps towards home, his heart buoyed by the triumph of light over darkness. The path stretched before him, a ribbon of promise that led him back to the warmth of his hearth, and he walked it with a quiet determination, ready to face whatever the dawn might bring. The night air was cool and crisp against Thomas's skin as he made his way along the well-worn path home. The moon hung high, a silvery sentinel casting a gentle glow over the landscape, illuminating the countryside with an ethereal light. Shadows danced among the trees, weaving in and out like phantoms of the past, whispering secrets only they could understand. He walked with a measured pace, each footfall a quiet testament to the weight of the world he carried upon his young shoulders. The path, familiar yet ever-changing, seemed to murmur encouragement beneath his feet, guiding him forward with an unseen hand. The leaves rustled softly in the breeze, a symphony of nature that harmonized with the distant hum of the village's celebration, now fading into the gentle embrace of the night. Thomas's thoughts, though momentarily lightened by the evening's respite, inevitably drifted back to the mine. It loomed in his mind like a dark abyss, a constant reminder of the struggle that defined his world. The mine was a living entity, breathing its oppressive breath into the lives of those who toiled within its depths. It was a place where light was a rare and precious commodity, where the air was thick with the scent of earth and toil, and where the shadows held secrets that were better left undisturbed. His mind wandered to the faces of his fellow miners, etched with lines of hardship and resilience, eyes that had seen too much yet refused to surrender to despair. Their stories intertwined with his own, a tapestry of shared struggle and silent courage. He thought of young James, whose laughter was a beacon of hope in the darkness, and of old Henry, whose hands, though gnarled with age, never faltered in their steadfast labor. As he walked, Thomas could almost hear the rhythmic clinking of pickaxes against stone, a haunting melody that echoed in the corridors of his memory. It was a sound that spoke of endurance, of lives spent in service to a relentless master. Yet, it was also a sound that spoke of defiance, a refusal to be broken by the weight of circumstance. The path began to climb gently, leading him up a small hill that overlooked the village. From this vantage point, Thomas could see the flickering lights of home, a constellation of warmth and safety nestled in the valley below. The sight filled him with a sense of peace, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was always a glimmer of hope to guide the way. As he crested the hill, the wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of the earth and the distant promise of rain. Thomas paused, taking a moment to savor the cool breeze against his skin, to let it cleanse the dust and worry from his mind. It was a fleeting moment of tranquility, a stolen breath in the ceaseless march of time. Yet, beneath the surface, a quiet urgency stirred, a reminder that the struggle was far from over. The mine, with its insatiable hunger, would call them back, demanding its due. The thought settled in his mind like a stone, heavy yet unyielding. But Thomas knew that they were not alone in this fight. They had each other, a community bound by ties of necessity and compassion, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The descent into the valley was gentle, the path winding through fields that stretched like a patchwork quilt beneath the moonlight. The stars above seemed to twinkle in silent agreement, a celestial audience to the unfolding drama below. Thomas's footsteps were steady, his resolve unwavering, as he made his way home. Upon reaching the village, the comforting sounds of home greeted him, a distant bark of a dog, the faint echo of laughter carried on the wind, the soft murmur of voices drifting through open windows. The village was a living, breathing entity, its heart beating in time with the lives of those who called it home. Thomas's house stood at the edge of the village, a small, humble dwelling that spoke of hard work and simple joys. The light spilling from its windows was a beacon, guiding him homeward, a promise of warmth and solace after a long day's toil. As he opened the door, the familiar scent of home enveloped him, a blend of wood smoke and the lingering aroma of supper. Inside, the fire crackled softly in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the room. His mother sat in a worn chair by the fire, her hands busy with knitting, a peaceful expression on her face. She looked up as he entered, her eyes filled with a love that needed no words. "Thomas," she said softly, her voice a balm to his weary soul. "You're home." He nodded, a small smile playing on his lips as he crossed the room to sit beside her. The warmth of the fire seeped into his bones, chasing away the chill of the night, and for a moment, the world outside faded into insignificance. They sat together in companionable silence, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the gentle click of knitting needles. It was a moment of rare peace, a reminder of the small joys that life offered amidst the struggle. As the hours slipped by, Thomas felt the weight of sleep begin to tug at his eyelids, a gentle insistence that could not be denied. He rose from his seat, bidding his mother good night, and made his way to his small room at the back of the house. The room was simple, a reflection of the life he led. A narrow bed, a small wooden chest, and a single window that framed the night sky. He lay down, the familiar creak of the mattress a lullaby that soothed him into slumber. In the quiet of the night, as the world outside continued its ceaseless dance, Thomas dreamed. His dreams were a tapestry of light and shadow, of hope and struggle, weaving together the threads of his life into a story that was uniquely his own. And as the stars kept their silent vigil overhead, Thomas slept, his heart filled with the promise of a new dawn.